Question 2 now, and we are being asked to simplify the following ratio. So 2.1.1, we have the ratio 3 is to 39. And of course, to simplify a ratio, we need to divide by the highest common factor. So divide by the highest common factor, the HCF. So I need to find what is the highest common factor of 3 and 39. Of course, in this case, it is 3. So your knowledge of highest common factors or how to find the highest common factor is important here. Otherwise, you're going to divide by the wrong thing. So we will then say, okay, I've got 3 as my highest common factor. So my highest common factor is equal to 3. So what am I going to do with my highest common factor? I'm going to divide both numbers in my ratio by 3. So that means I'm going to say 3 divided by 3 is to 39 divided by 3. And that, of course, 3 over 3 is 1. And 39 divided by 3 is 13. So 3 times 13 is 39. So my simplified ratio is 1 is to 13. And that is my ratio simplified. So I divide by highest common factor and I write down the simplified version or form, and that is it. Okay, so 2.1.2 now. So we know that we need to find the HCF, the highest common factor. So what is the highest common factor here? Well, it is 5 in this case. So many times when you have these kind of ratios where there's two numbers in the ratio and one is sort of significantly higher than the other one, it usually, not always, but usually follows that the smaller number, in this case the 5, it usually ends up being the highest common factor, because if you think about it, you cannot, if you think in terms of the highest number that can divide into both numbers, which are these two, that highest common factor cannot be larger than 5, because 5 basically sets the limit. So if 5 can divide into the other number, it means that 5 is the highest common factor. And in this case, 5 can go into 500. So I'm going to divide. So my highest common factor is then 5. So I'm going to say, well, that means I must divide 500 by 5. And on the other side, I will divide 5 by 5. So 5 divided by 5, of course, is 1. And please note that the 5 was originally on the right-hand side. I saw that some of you in your test, you then shifted the thing around and you wrote the 1 on the left-hand side. Okay, so it needs to stay on the side that it was. Otherwise, you are changing the ratio, essentially. So 500 divided by 5 is 100. So that is 100 to 1. Okay, so 100 to 1 is a simplified version or form of that ratio. Right, 2.1.3 now. We have the ratio 75 grams. 75 grams is to 5 kilograms. So my units are different. So that means I cannot simplify the ratio yet. I need to make my units the same. So I need to convert. And again, it's I suppose, in my opinion, it's safer to convert from the smaller unit, from the bigger unit to the smaller unit, because it allows you to multiply instead of dividing, because dividing usually ends up giving you decimal numbers. In other words, if you want to go from 75 grams to kilograms, you're going to have to divide here by 1,000, which means 75 divided by 1,000, which means you're going to have a decimal answer. And that kind of makes it sometimes a bit awkward to find the HCF. So you would normally go for converting the larger unit, which is the kilograms. You'll convert that to the smaller one, which is grams, because then you can multiply by a factor of 1,000. So converting kilograms to grams means I must multiply by 1,000, because there's 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. So that's the conversion factor. So of course I'm not going to convert the 75 grams because it is in grams already. So 75 grams will remain. And of course I will then multiply 5 kilograms by 1,000, and that will give me 5,000 grams. So 5,000 grams is the same as 5,000 kilograms. And now my units are the same. They are both grams. I can even, at this point, I can even drop the units then, because I've taken care of the units. So I can just rewrite this if I wanted to. I can say 75 is to 5,000. Let's lose the units because they're not important anymore. Right. So again, here I have a situation where I've got one small number and one significantly larger number than the small number. And if 75 can divide into 5,000, it means that 75 is the highest common factor. So let's check that. 5,000 divided by 75, it can't. So in this case, I cannot just sort of assume that 75 is the highest common factor, because as you can see, the answer is a decimal answer. So we need to choose something that is obviously common to both, that can divide into both. And in this case, let's try 25. So 75 divided by 25, of course, we know that is 3, and 5,000 divided by 25 is 200. So, of course, if you didn't know that offhand, you would have to go and find the HCF, and depending on how good you are with your times tables and how good you are with finding your factors and multiples, it might take you longer or not so long, than the next person. You would, of course, then go and do something like use a ladder method like we did here previously, to then find the HCF of 75 and 5,000. But for now, we know here that the HCF is 25. So we're going to divide both sides by 25. So that is 75 over 25 is to 5,000 over 25. So 75 divided by 25 gives us 3. And of course, 5,000 divided by 25, as we saw earlier, it is 200. So that is 3 to 200. And that would be our simplified form, or simplest form of that ratio.